Welcome and thank you very much for joining us for the 10th episode of YCP's virtual monthly series, Refiner's Fire. It's so good to be here with you. Every month, Catholic business leaders from diverse industries share professional and spiritual wisdom in short 30-minute live sessions. In spite of the short length of these segments, we hope the tips and insights will be powerful for all of us as we strive to work and witness for Christ this year. The name of our micro interview series, Refiner's Fire, actually comes from scripture, from Malachi chapter 3, verse 2, where we learn that God is like a refiner's fire who seeks to purify us and make us the best we can be. That's the whole point of this series. Through the inspiration and wisdom of these exceptional Catholic leaders, we're challenged to improve in small ways in our professional and spiritual lives. So let's be open to this journey of refinement so that in everything we do it aiming for that higher standard of excellence that gives glory to God. Our topic this month is executive presence. What does that really mean? Keeping ourselves in the presence of God is not a surface level feeling or appearance. Rather, Brother Lawrence tells us that God, quote, paints himself in the depths of our soul. So that sense of presence actually requires getting in touch with a deeper reality. Similarly, executive presence is not some kind of air that we try and put on for others. Executive presence is much more powerful when it is confidence we exude as a natural result of having done the work of developing our skills and adding real value. And I can't think of a better person to speak on this topic than Hope Thatcher, founder of Em-Tel Communications. Although she was top producing national account executive with WorldCom, Hope desired a job that would allow her to spend more time with her growing family. So she took the entrepreneur route and started Em-Tel. Her company is thriving with clients that include many of Georgia's Fortune 500 companies and a reputation for professional integrity, unparalleled responsiveness and accountability, and industry foresight. Hope worked hard and prayed hard to get where she is today. And that journey has led her to be a confident leader with a company that offers unmatched, superior service in the telecom industry. The executive presence she exudes has led to strong and lasting vendor partnerships and relationships across many different telecom specialties. Hope is excited to join us to share how we too can develop an authentic executive presence as we progress through our careers. Welcome, Hope. We're so honored to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for those kind words.
Wonderful. Well, let's get right to it here. So just a reminder to our audience, we're going to start off with Q&A between the two of us, and then we're going to open it up to questions from our audience. So our audience can be including their questions in the comments on either Facebook or YouTube platforms, and we'll get to those later on in the segment. So Hope, let's get specific about first, what does it mean, the term executive presence? We might be tempted to think it only refers to people in boardroom presentations or during job performance reviews. So how should we frame our understanding of this term and how we can apply it in really practical situations in our life?
Okay, so executive presence is creating an image upon others that you are an executive, right? And that's very powerful for someone to attribute leadership traits onto you based on your presence, based on your appearance, on the way you're speaking. But if we change the word executive and internalize it for a word such as leader or mentor, then we can see how it's applicable to our other identities. As a parent, we want to guide our children correctly, right? To Christ, as a parishioner, we want to guide and strengthen our following. Excuse me. And of course, an executive, you want to be able to guide your peers and so forth. So changing the word executive, which understandably seems to be boxed into the business environment because executives are found in the business workspace, changing that word to another leadership word will help you apply it elsewhere.
Yes, and then it can apply to us whether we're working in an office building, whether we're a stay-at-home parent,
Exactly.
whether we're just someone getting started, maybe we're more in an analyst or an entry-level position at our company. It allows us to really apply it in a different setting. I love that. So let's talk a little bit now about executive presence itself. So our inclination may be to say, well, I'm not sure I have that yet, but maybe help us understand a little bit more. What is it, and also how can we develop it if maybe we wouldn't say, yes, I'm confident that I have this kind of leadership presence that you've just described.
Okay, I like to say that there are four C's involved with executive presence, right? There's your confidence, competence, and understanding what you know and how you're going to be able to communicate that. And then there's composure under stressful situations. You're composed, and then of course there are great communication skills. But I'm also going to throw a fifth factor out there. It's what I call the Christ factor, right? And in the secular world, you're not going to hear that. You're not going to hear Christ factor. You're going to hear emotional, IQ or emotional Q, emotional intelligence. And that is being aware of those around you. And that's having empathy for them, respect for them, as well as just being kind. And that creates emotional connections. And that's what's key to having great presence, having emotional connections with those around you, showing your respect for them such that they want to be around you. They want to be with someone who is showing leadership skills as well as someone that is kind, right? So where do we get these? Well, a lot of these attributes can be learned. And I have to bring some books here, right? So there's the winning mindset. So traits can be learned and picked up from such a book. Harness the power, of presence. Another book, I'm not quite sure. There you go. And creating personal presence. So a lot of these traits can be learned. The one difficult one that can't be learned but has to be gained is confidence, right? And I would say to start gaining confidence, recognize that you're loved. You're loved unconditionally by Christ. You're loved unconditionally by the people, by your family, by great friends. So regardless of what happens at meeting, regardless of whatever, you're loved. So that builds confidence. And know your stuff, know your trade, such that if anyone asks you anything, they can't stomp you. So between emotional love as well as knowledge, that builds confidence. And so these traits can be learned, and then they can be gained through emotional connections with people, recognizing that you're loved, recognizing you know your stuff. You can go in a room and strut and know that you won't be stopped.
Amazing. And I think it's worth calling out here that oftentimes we may think of presence and confidence and these 4 or 5 C's actually that you mentioned as something that come more innately to someone who may be a little more extroverted, a little more willing to be in the limelight. But we can equally say that there are ways that you can have those 5 C's that don't really have to do with your comfortability public speaking or your willingness to stand up in front of a large crowd and give some kind of presentation or answer a really important question in front of the executive leadership team or whatever it is. But there's ways in which all of us, with all of our personalities on the spectrum, can embody these 5 C's. Would you say that's the case? And anything you'd add there?
That's exactly the case. Like you said, it doesn't have to pertain to a work environment. Recognizing that you're loved, recognizing that you have a good support group helps you embody the executive presence, and recognizing that you're authentic and want to do good also helps you embody that, adding authenticity to that.
Exactly. Yeah, and thanks for sharing those books. By the way, we'll be able to find
Yeah.
some links and distribute that so that people can take a look at those. Great
Right,
suggestion.
right. Many resources, podcasts, so forth, they're all out there to support developing executive presence because it is such an important trait to have.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now that we've defined our terms and talked a little bit more about it, as professionals and as Catholics, why should this topic, this term of executive presence, really matter to us? And follow up question: why is this so important? This topic important to you?
Okay, well, regardless of whether we like it or not, we're always, sending impressions out there, right? People are always perceiving who we are as individuals, whether it's the waitress and how we're presenting our order, whether it's somebody in the elevator hearing us scold our child or not scold our child, impressions are always being made. So recognizing that, why don't we shape those impressions? Why don't we put our best foot forward? We're representing ourselves, but we're also representing our Catholic, group, our spirituality. So we always want to represent in the best light. With regards to why it's important to me, I started this company over 20 years ago, and my business card didn't say Verizon. It doesn't say AT&T, right? It says Hope Thatcher. So if Hope Thatcher is going to compete with the likes of Verizon and AT&T, and in consulting opportunities with the likes of PwC and Ernst & Young, I have to represent from the very first time I meet a client, a potential client, right? So my presence, my ability to differentiate myself as a leader from those other internal, let's say, national sales reps from those companies, that's key. So I'm always on, because I can't lose an opportunity to gain someone's respect on the onset. So so you have to feel confident about who you are, and you feel that confidence because you know you're going to be providing your best to that client, and that's going to be seen pretty authentically. So executive presence is very important.
It's so important that we do acknowledge that we influence others regardless of where we are and what we're doing, whether it's in a workplace setting or at home with family or with friends, or maybe at our parish involved in some capacity, or in other organizations that we're a part of. And to know that we have the chance to positively, or alternatively negatively, influence others, that presence becomes so much more important. And then we layer the Catholic piece on top of that, and suddenly we're now representing, our faith. We're representing Jesus Christ. We're representing our church. We're representing our Catholic peers. So this influence and understanding that becomes so critical, especially as we're called to evangelize, right?
Correct.
So just a reminder for our listeners, we'll be shifting over and taking some questions from our audience soon. So be sure and include those questions in the chat on your platforms where you're watching us. So we'll get to those questions with Hope shortly. So continuing on, Hope, clear communication, which was one of the 5 C's that you mentioned. It isn't always easy, but it's so essential, both in our professional lives and in our personal lives. So how do we start preparing ourselves to communicate in a way that deserves this term of executive presence? What are some of the components you'd recommend?
Right. So if your goal is to have executive presence, you need to create a baseline of where you are now, right? You take these 5 C's and you gauge where you are with each of those particular factors. Where am I with my communication skills? Where am I with my presence? What's my appearance? Do I know body language? Can I read body language? So really assess where you are with those particular elements, and start focusing on where you want more improvement, right? So speak to friends and say, well, how do I come across, at a meeting? When you speak to peers, look at people that you want to emulate. Look at the management within your company. I like that one. I like that person because she walks into the room and the first thing she does is smile. She makes everyone feel like ease in the room. So list that. I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to feel comfortable, even though I'm nervous, to go in and smile. So emulate some of the traits that you see, jot it down. It doesn't become real until you see it, you jot it down, and then you act on it. But assess where you are as it pertains to those traits, and know where you have to focus to get to the point where you want to be. So it's recognizing what needs to be improved. It's practicing on that particular trait, and then it's just doing.
And I can't help but add.
Go ahead.
I can't help but add here, Hope, that mentorship seems like such a wonderful opportunity to cultivate these different traits and that we've talked about that roll up into this executive presence. YCP has an executive mentorship program where our members can be matched with people like you. Actually, you're one of our mentors on our mentor platform. And it's such an important way to help us to have kind of a mirror to reflect back on us what that plan is that we have in place to grow in those different categories. Any other thoughts there in terms of how mentors may have helped shape your own presence or your recommendation to young professionals getting started in their careers in that light?
I strongly recommend getting a mentor, and I could use a mentor. It doesn't matter how long you've been in the business. There's always room for growth. But what's interesting about mentoring is that you actually gain more as a mentor. I have mentored someone at YCP, and I am so inspired by my mentee. It's amazing how you think you're going to give and assist, and it always turns around where you've gained much more. And I'm especially inspired by YCP, and I'll address that in a little bit, but I can elaborate a little bit further.
Terrific. Well, moving on to our next question here. When I think of executive presence, I often think of Jesus giving the Great Commission to the apostles in Matthew chapter 28. One can only imagine the way they were able to communicate this good news in such a way that people were compelled to listen and, most importantly, to really act on it. How is cultivating an executive presence essential for our calling as Catholics to evangelize? And how is that best done in an increasingly secular and hostile workplace for us as Catholics?
Okay, so you can only spread the word or share your faith if those around you want to know more about you, if those around you want to listen to you, right? So you have to be kind. You have this executive presence, you're a leader, but are you authentic? Are you kind to those around you? And when you are a leader and you are kind and respectful to those around you, people can't help but want to be around you. And when you have that, when you have people that want to be around you, then you're in an opportunity to share your thoughts, your ideas, your faith, and they're going to be well received because you're this great person that people believe you're authentic and they want to emulate you. They want to know what makes you tick because they see these traits in you that they would like to acquire. And when you have that engagement with people, those connections, then you're in a great opportunity to shape ideas, share your faith, be open to it, be open to sharing, because you can't share if no one wants to be there to listen to you, right? So you need to have these traits recognized, and you need those emotional connections to bring people in. And I would say in this secular environment that we're in, it's not, it would be a great idea to display your faith. If it's wearing a cross, if it's saying grace before eating with your peers, display your Catholicism.
Terrific. Thank you, Hope. So coming up to our last question, and just a reminder for our audience, we are going to start taking your questions here in a moment. So submit those in the chat. So final question here, Hope. What is your wish for young Catholic workers today, especially as it relates to this topic? What would you leave us with?
Okay. This is where I wanted to express something earlier, but I think this is a good time for what I want to say. I feel that the members of YCP already have a head start. They're leading their careers recognizing that Christ is such a big part of their lives. They're identifying themselves as Catholic professionals, right? And that's different from how I started my career. I started up, raised Catholic and a professional. So I was Catholic and professional, which is very different from a Catholic professional, right? So my wish for the members is to continue identifying yourself as a Catholic professional. And I'm only starting to do that now. And you do that by surrounding yourselves with other Catholic professionals that make you accountable for being true to your faith, right? My husband and I have just recently strengthened our faith because of the people we've surrounded ourselves with, other strong Catholics. And so for those members, regardless of where you are in your career, whether you've achieved what you want to achieve, always identify yourself as that Catholic professional. As a matter of fact, Father Terry at my church, he would end the Mass and say, they will know us, well, they will know we are Catholics and Christians by the way we love. So I'm going to tweak that, and I'm going to say to this membership, they are going to know we are Catholic and Christian executives by the way we lead and love. right? So let's represent
I love that.
to do